Firstly, I'd like to thank the speakers for being here today. For those of you who can remember, it wasn't so long ago we had this volcano thing happening in Iceland, and that pretty much wiped out trips for millions of people. And I think that that is an excellent sort of opening issue for you to think about in terms of how you handle a crisis. That's about as unplanned a crisis as has occurred in industry, and it impacts brands immediately. And I think that, as Dave mentioned, the airline industry is probably at the cutting edge, certainly the sharpest tip of the blade, when it comes to having to react to exogenous things like a volcano, like world events, and they have to react very, very quickly, nimbly, and you have to be sensitive when you've got literally thousands of people facing, and you will travel. You know what it's like when you go up to the gate and there's this one agent, and this one agent has no idea what happened. They have no answers to the questions that you have, and you're furious, and it's you and 12,000 of your new friends, and there's this one person trying to handle it. It's extremely difficult, and what we've seen increasingly in the last 18 months to 24 months is that there's a technology called social media that enables and empowers people in this industry to react very quickly, and enables people not to stand in this one long line facing this poor agent, because you can actually use your smartphone and you can do clever things that you should do with smartphones. So that's sort of my introduction. The first speaker, put on my glasses, is Morgan Johnson from JetBlue. He's the manager of corporate communications. He joined JetBlue in 2002 and joined the communications team in 2007. He now heads JetBlue's social media activities. And by the way, just to give you a sort of an idea of what that means, JetBlue has 1.6 million followers on Twitter. So that's the king of the hill. JetBlue has been named the top brand by J.D. Power. Fast Company refers to them as the US brand with the greatest social currency. And Business Insider 2009 ranked Morgan as one of their Silicon Alley top 100 people. So with that stirring introduction, Morgan, you're going to have to live up to it.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm going through your deck first. Let's see. This is,
Let's see if you can do my presentation.
Let's do a quick one.
It's right after.
There we go. Oops. That's all good. Ta-da! We've got a little bit more fun graphics. It's a little stylized plan. We're happy to celebrate our. We're a little bit more stylized and crazy. We got a little more younger brand. Still pretty old. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary today, or this year. So we're really excited about that. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about how we approach social media engagement, and really in particular how we approach engagement in crisis communications. It's kind of fitting. And it's important to think about, we are being watched. Addison said it's very fast-paced. And when you're in the airport and you've got a plane full of people yelling at a gate agent, that's not fun for that gate agent. But for a long time, from a public relations perspective, we had time to come up with our story. For many, many years, we didn't have to worry about coming up with the wording of our press release or our response until Monday morning when we came to the office and all the news agencies finally got back to work on Monday. Those days are gone. We now live in a world where, yeah, people are tweeting at the gate, people are tweeting on the plane, people are tweeting 30,000 feet in the air. And they are now as much a journalist as ABC News or CNN. And while they may not have necessarily the broad audience of CNN or ABC, the fact is what they're posting will live on for eternity, while ABC gets a 5-minute spot and they're gone. So, how do we deal with the new reality that our customers are out there talking, our customers are out there watching, and our customers are out there spreading a message that we have absolutely no control over. The fact is, you know, we live in a world where crises can pop up in a moment's notice that public relations need to make sure that they are on top of. Gone are the days where you can have a weekend off. And so think about how we're monitoring. It's important to note, when the U.S. Airways, I'm sure I don't have to ask, we're all in New York, how many people recognize this image. The fact was, when U.S. Airways went down in the Hudson, phenomenal miracle in the Hudson, they did a great job of that landing, a great job of recovery. The fact was, that image was up within 9 minutes. Chances are, most of the world understood what was happening before U.S. Airways operations understood what was happening. And that's a heady thing to think about. And so as JetBlue approaches our own crisis communications and our own emergency response, we understand at this point that chances are I'm going to be the one, or someone on my team who's watching Twitter 24/7 are going to be the ones who are going to recognize a crisis before our operations team does, before our airports do. Probably not before the pilot does, but before most of the people on the ground. And so we're constantly watching, constantly scanning for any mention of JetBlue. And how do we approach those customers? Absolutely, one of the great benefits of that is also that we now have an opportunity to engage the lesser crises. And those are the ones that have the greatest opportunity. My first day as part of JetBlue's corporate communications team was February 14th of 2007. It was the worst first day of a job ever. How many people are here from New York? Okay. How many people here were traveling on February 14th? No hands raised. Awesome. For us, February 14th of 2007 was a game changer. February 14th of 2007 we had an ice storm in the Northeast. And because of new DOT regulations regarding ice pellets, that thing between rain and snow, you are not allowed to take off. Which wasn't all that big a deal, except for the fact that that ice pellet situation lasted for almost 8 hours. And during that time, we were still of the mindset of people want to get to where they're going. We're not going to cancel flights. They're willing to take a little bit of a delay. The fact was, we had every single gate full of planes, the people on those planes. We had tarmac full of planes that were starting to freeze to the tarmac because of these ice pellets. We had customers trapped on planes for up to upwards of 8 hours. This is not a good first day to start on the PR team. And one of the things that happened as a result of this, we canceled a great deal of our operation. We stranded a lot of people, we made a lot of people really upset, and customers spoke out heavily, not only to our gate agents, but on YouTube and on Facebook and on any blog that they could find. Thankfully, at this point, Twitter wasn't really on the landscape, so we were slightly clean. But the fact was, this was a big problem for us. And how did we recover? Well, right off the bat, we sent an email to every single one of our customers in our database, whether you were flying or not. If we had your email address, we sent you an apology. And we said, here's what happened, here's why it happened, and here's why it'll never, ever happen again. We put our CEO at the time, David Nealman, in front of every single news media we could find, and we said, talk about it. We want to make sure our customers understood that this was not another day of business for us. This was not just a little hiccup. This was something that affected us deeply, and we were going to do everything in our power to make sure it never happened again. For my part, on February 19th, a few days after we finally finished recovery of the Valentine's Day Massacre, as we called it, I said to our folks, at the time I was doing a lot of video work for JetBlue, and we were doing an internal video for our crew members, where David, our CEO, addressing our crew members. And I said, we're going to do one more video, and this time, David, you're talking to customers. And he said, well, I've already done a few interviews. I'm like, yeah, but you've done interviews where you're talking to Matt Lauer, or you're talking to David Letterman. where we want to do a video where you're talking to the customers. And so what happened was, we put David on YouTube. Free tools that are out there, available for anyone to use to get your message directly to the consumer. You're cutting out the middleman. You're saying directly to the consumer, here's what happened, here's why we went wrong, here's what we're doing to make sure we'll never do it again. And so, quick little screen grab of the quick video that we did in the conference room with a little tiny camera and the email that we sent out to every single customer explaining our new customer bill of rights. Here's what we learned. Customers want that explanation. They want that sense of authenticity. And they see that sense of authenticity. Because it wasn't David talking to the Today Show, it was David talking to the customers. And that goodwill is really built by that sort of transparency. The second you try to play a customer, the second you try to spin a customer, they're going to call you out on it. And so, here's what was the impetus for our social media strategy. It was engagement, it was transparency. It was really an understanding of we're in this together. If we make you happy, if we work collaboratively, we can build a product that you're going to be thrilled to use, and we're going to be thrilled because we're still getting your money. And so, how are we approaching social media at this point? It's really about getting out in front of the message. It's getting out in front of any sort of story, big or small. So this year, as an example, we had a lot of snow coming. Winter snowstorms are always a pain for us. We live in the Northeast, we live in the most congested airspace in the world. And for us, snowstorms happen. Now, we can let the media take control of that story, or we can take control of that story ourselves. And so we use social media to do that. We use our social media to say, hey, here's the story, here's what's going on, here's our take on it. And if we built up that capital, if we built up that engagement, that social capital is what we can use to make sure our message is heard. Thank you so much.
Okay.